Well, welcome to my lightning talk here at the Serverless Practitioners Summit. My talk is entitled Finding Managed Services in a Serverless World with Crossplane and OpenFaaS. My name is Daniel Mangum. I work on the Crossplane project as well as on some other stuff at Upbound. So I'm going to jump right into it because we're going to try and show off a pretty cool demo today. So I want to go through the slides relatively quickly. So first of all, we would just want to think about what is the purpose of using serverless on Kubernetes? So the first thing to note is that Kubernetes is a pretty complex system, right? And it's growing ever more complex by the day. So as a developer, when you want to get your code running as fast as possible, serverless is a useful abstraction. OpenFaaS is a platform that allows you to run serverless functions on Kubernetes. And I found it's the easiest way to go from zero to code running on Kubernetes possible. So that's what we're going to use today for demonstrating the serverless functionality. So that's great that you can get your functions running quickly, but we also want the ability for us to be able to make those functions robust, right? So your code is running, and what do you do next is the real question. Well, you want to back those functions with data services. So Kubernetes allows you to use data services that are running in cluster pretty easily, right? So you can deploy Postgres into your cluster, but then you're tasked with managing it. What we want to do is defer that management and create an abstraction just like we do for our workloads with serverless functions. So Crossplane allows you to provision managed services on cloud providers or on-prem, wherever you'd like, that are managed services that you can then consume in your Kubernetes cluster. And what we want to do today is be able to deploy our code using serverless functions on Kubernetes and deploy our managed services with Crossplane and then wire those two things together. So we want a consistent level of abstraction across our data services and our workloads. So before we jump into the demo, I'll give you a quick overview of what we're going to be showing off today. This is a brief architecture diagram that doesn't exactly cover everything we're going to do, but it gives the basic idea. So I have a Kubernetes cluster already running with OpenFaaS and Crossplane installed. What we're going to do is create a database resource, which I'll show you that abstraction in a moment, with Crossplane, which is going to spin up a Cloud SQL instance and then propagate that connection information into the Kubernetes cluster, which then we can consume in functions that we're deploying with OpenFaaS. So let's jump right into it. And the first thing I want to mention is that all of the code and manifests that we're using are available in this CrossFaaS repo, which is in my GitHub account here. And there's also some useful information about how you can set up this same demo that we're showing here. So the first thing I want to mention is Crossplane has a concept of platform operators, developers, and app operators. So platform operators are the folks that want to define the abstract resources that app operators and developers can consume. So we're going to start off by saying we want to expose a database type to developers. And we don't want them to be knowledgeable or care about the underlying database that's actually satisfying their request. We just want to say you can ask for a database. All you have to do is specify the storage size you want, and we'll provide that for you. In this case, it's going to be provided by Cloud SQL, which we define here in our composition. We're mapping our database type to a Cloud SQL instance and then allowing some of those parameters to pass through into that. So when a developer wants a database, they'll create a database type, but behind the scenes, it'll get satisfied by a Cloud SQL instance. And we could have multiple of these compositions that can satisfy the database definition that we define, potentially on different cloud providers or on cloud and on-prem, and we can schedule to those appropriately. So if we look over in the example directory here, you'll see what the developer would actually push to this repo to get their database. It's a very simple resource here where they're just defining the storage size as well as where they want that connection information written to. And the way that we're able to do this all through GitOps is because we also have Argo CD running in the cluster. So the first thing that you would do as the platform operator is deploy those abstractions that we just looked at there in the platform directory. So this is pointing to the platform directory. You'll see that we have that composition, infrastructure definition, and cluster role. And when we create that infrastructure definition, Crossplane is going to spit out a CRD here of type database in the crossfast.io group. So once that's available, now developers can go and push a database type, and they can expect that to be satisfied. Crossplane will go and actually spin up a Cloud SQL instance for them and connect that back where they say they want the connection information written to. So when they push that example directory, you'll see here they pushed that MyDB type, and a Cloud SQL instance was actually created to satisfy that. And the connection information will be written where they specified they want their secret. And you could actually check on the status of this Cloud SQL database by looking at the status of the resource. We'll see it's runnable and the resource is available for use. So the last part of this is OpenFaaS, and we want to be able to deploy some simple functions to interact with this database. So if you look in the func directory here, we have list and post. We'll look at list first. It's a very simple function. You'll just see that we are going to connect to the database and list all of the serverless talk entries that are in there. And then post is going to do a similar thing. They have been packaged into Docker containers and pushed so that we can now deploy them in our OpenFaaS portal here. So the OpenFaaS portal allows you to deploy new functions into your cluster. It has a nice store that has some awesome functions available to you. You can also specify your own Docker images, which is what we are going to do here. So I'll start out with the list function. So that's in CrossFaaS list, and I'll use the latest that I pushed up before this talk. We'll name this list. And then the secret that we specified on that database was called dbcon. We want those secret values injected into our function so that it's able to connect to the database. And I'll go ahead and deploy that function. And we've got a little bit of delay here, but while that's coming up, I'm going to go ahead and also deploy the post function here. So that's going to be similar. It's called #dan/crossfaaS post. Once again, I'll do the latest tag on that, and we'll call this post. And we want it also to be able to connect to that same database. So I'll do dbcon here. All right, so I pushed up some entries to the database before this talk started. So we should be able to see those here if we invoke the list function, which is connecting to that database and telling us what values are in it. So you'll see here, I should see 3 values coming back, and it looks like I have. So these are our serverless talks today. Finding managed services in a serverless world, that's mine. I pushed up a demo one, and actually behind the scenes here, this is the second time we're recording this. I pushed up one there that said we are live. So it looks like that our list function is easily able to connect to that database. And now let's test out our post one as well. So we need to send a JSON payload. So I'll say title is we are live too. The host is still me. Say Dan. And we'll say, since this is our second time through here, that our viewers have actually increased to 1 million. All right. So we want to post this to the database. Let's see if this is successful. It looks like it is. We got that 200 response back. And now if we go back over to list, we should see that when we invoke that we now have 4 values. And it looks like we do. So awesome. So we have now provisioned some simple functions and a database through GitOps and through the OpenFaaS portal that we're able to easily talk to each other. And we've gotten our code running pretty quickly. So this is just a fraction of the functionality you can achieve by combining a serverless platform like OpenFaaS and a managed services platform like Crossplane, all running on Kubernetes. If you're interested in more information about other things you can do with this, definitely check out the OpenFaaS and Crossplane websites where we have some more tutorials on how to wire up your infrastructure and define platforms for your developers.